So here's the first question, which is for 15 marks, where there are two people, Rajiv and Sudeep, who shares a common wall. There's a neem tree in the Rajiv's yard which tilts into the Sudeep's yard. When the tree sheds its leaves, it gets difficult for Sudeep to clean the yard. He tells Rajiv to cut the tree, but he refuses. So what question is asking here is like they need to give four solutions. We need to give the four solution for this problem, but via illustration. So if I try to explain you this particular situation where Rajiv and Sudeep, there are two people who shares a common wall, and the neem tree in Rajiv's yard bends over into the Sudeep's garden. That's the simple crisp statement. So Sudeep keeps struggling with the fallen leaves, but Rajiv refuses to cut the tree. Now let's look at the four different possible ways for the solution which is been asked by this particular question. How creatively both the people, keeping this particular limitation aside, how they are going to solve the problem is what we need to think over here. So now let's look at the four different ways of the solution for this particular problem. So here's the first solution where Rajiv turns the neem tree into an artistic feature. So he wraps the trunk with a soft LED lights and install a funnel-like canopy that collects the fallen leaves. This way the leaves can be gathered neatly and reused for the medical purpose, for anything, maybe not just medical, but yeah, anything. So now it's not just a mess, but it becomes a useful and a beautiful installation as well. The second solution where the tree is slightly trimmed from Sudeep's side and the common wall is extended upwards. So on the top of that, a curved canopy is added to block the fallen leaves again. So the space underneath turns into a cozy niche where Sudeep can enjoy his chai or something, an evening snack maybe, without worrying about the mess above. So here's the third idea where we go for a smart roof solution, where a slow cantilevered structure is built above Sudeep's garden. So whenever leaves or waterfall or anything, they slide right back into Rajiv's yard. And bonus, Sudeep now gets a shaded area in his garden as well. So here comes the last one where Rajiv hires a gardener or a caretaker, and to make it more futuristic, he can also able to install a small automated leaf collecting machine that regularly clears the fallen leaves. So here is like two solutions in one particular thing. We are collecting and we are hiring something, or we are investing in something has been shown, but that's what has been mentioned, whether he will hire a gardener or a caretaker, or he will do some investment into some futuristic machinery or something like that. So they will do the task for that particular thing. So yeah, it's a very win-win situation where Sudeep yard stays clean, and at the same time someone else is getting job, or something else is been also getting paid for that particular work flow. So, and lastly, if we talk about the do's and don't part of it, please make sure that colors are not being mentioned over here. So please don't waste time into rendering or something like that. Please be very clear that shading or something is also been not properly asked in this particular question. So your drawing should be very clear and it should justify the solution neatly. And at the same time, with the do's part, if I focus more on, so all the four questions should be very neat and clean from design creative perspective. Also, the answer should not be very generic, and your visual should easy to understand, not more detailed or complex or heavy, intense sketching elements should be mentioned in your artwork. And please make sure that there should be few explanatory lines as well to mention in such particular visual type of answer. So let's move on to the second question where they're asking that there's a thirsty crow and who is looking at the juice kept in a shop, and obviously this juice shop is located in a market. So there are the two sub questions added to this particular questionnaire. The first one says that you need to imagine that you are a crow and you're looking at the juice shop. Draw the shop from that crow's perspective. And if you move on to the another sub question, which is asking to draw a poster about the crow who deserves to have a juice from a juice shop. Very creative questionnaire and very fun to answer this question. So let's move on to the answer part of it. So here's the part A of the solution where they've asked us to imagine that you need to imagine that you are the crow itself and you need to draw the shoe shop from that bird's eye perspective, from the crow's perspective. So if you see uh, in the solution, the crow, from the crow perspective, they are trying to sketch everything, who is sitting on the branch opposite to the shop. And then you can also see that there are other crows as well, along with this particular guy who's watching to the whole place. And everyone is like staring at the juice stall across the road. So there's this juice vendor who's serving the customer. The street is also busy with the different hawkers, pedestrians, and the guys are on the bike. That elevated diagonal angle gives us the complete street context while making it very clear what he is seeing from the eye. And obviously, the whole thing looks very practical enough that this is what the heavy market looks like. Now, let's move to the part B, where really the crazy drama kicks in, where we need to create a poster. So, if you can see the solution, there's a bold poster showcasing the crow as if they are the gang member or something, and they are showcasing their love for the Jews as if the gangs of Jews loving rebel type of thing. They are not begging; they are just claiming what's rightfully theirs, which is what has been mentioned throughout the poster. You can also see one with the glasses, one with a cigar, another one carrying a bat, all holding juice, like they are running the show. So the text is also supporting this particular emotion, which says that you better not mess with my gang. So it's got some attitude, humor, and also a punchy narrative. Overall, if I talk, the contrast between the part A, which is observation, and the part B, which is exaggeration, really completes this particular question answer beautifully. So if we talk about the do's and don'ts for this particular answer, it's very clear that, I mean, if I start with the don'ts part, please don't avoid whenever there is like memory type of question, memory drawing or type of question, you need to make sure that always go for some perspective driven visual, or else it should, if I talk in a very simple manner, it should look 3D, it should have some volumetric visualization rather than being very flat or a 2D composition. So make sure that you also start practicing in terms of an volumetric visualization or a 3D visualization. If I talk about, there should have some inclined angle to it rather than drawing simple flat human figures. So do practice that. And apart from this, please make sure that if I talk about the don't part again in terms of the second part B of this particular answer, which is poster, don't draw here memory sketches or something. Like it's a poster, right? So please make sure that it should look like a poster. So both the questions are very different. In the first, it's more about your visualization and memory drawing skill set, and in the second, it's a poster making sketch. So make sure that there should be some difference. And if I talk about the do's part, please be sure that don't forget to mention the practicality in the question one. It should look very realistic market. It should look very detailed market. It should not look like there's some curfew going on and there's only one or two person in the market. Market should look like market. So make sure that you incorporate all the elements which has been asked in the question. Juice shop should be visible. Market, if they are asking market, so make sure that market should look like market and it should not look like only one or two shops. Apart from this, there will be one human. Please don't do that. Please be very realistic and practical approach in terms of visual environment if you are creating. When I come to the second part of the question, which is poster, please do remember that poster is all about typography, the grid system, the visual hierarchy, the flow of the content, which is like first primary is the crazy visual, secondary is the title, tertiary is the few extra element. Please don't forget to add few more element in terms of accessory, extra props, extra objects to give a bit of a style or an aesthetic character, an authentic characterization for this particular thing. Apart from this, please do make sure that color the poster so that it can add a bit of more aesthetic and punchy visualization to your whole thought process. So let's move on to the question 3. And honestly, I mean, this type of question will really test your empathy and design observation skill. So let's break it down. So this question shows a railway sink image of a train. I mean, it's a scene from a train, Indian Railway, and we are asked to categorize 5 different user group based either on age or physical disabilities, and it is also asking to describe the challenges they face while using the sink when the train is moving. So, if I try to explain you this particular question, this is where your design sensitivity matters. It's not just about listing 5 randomly group of people under some categories, and it's about more understanding the real struggle and your observation in terms of categorizing this 5 particular different category of the people over here, and to answer and justify the statement for this. So now let's walk you through each of the 5 category of the question and explain them clearly. The first one is the disabled people on wheelchair. So you can see in this particular sketch where it has been shown that a person on a wheelchair struggling to reach the sink. The major challenge, the sink is placed too high and is very compact. There's no front clearance for the wheelchair. So a disabled person simply can't roll in the reach the tap to wash the hand. It's a major accessibility gap over here, which has been tried to be shown in the sketch. So if we move on to the second solution, which is like for the category of the small kids or the children, where we are seeing that in the kid is trying to use the sink, barely reaching the tap with an adult beside them. The major challenge over here is like it's about the proportion and the height. The sink is designed at adult level. A child won't reach it without adult support. Plus, in a moving train, that imbalances and is even riskier because the sinks are usually nearby the doors. So this is a major risk-driven positioning of the sink with the height, and it's not at all appropriately made for the children's or the kids section. So now moving on to the third section where we are showcasing people suffering from the Parkinson's disease. Like this one is more about neuromuscular disabilities, where we have tried to show that the person with tremors trying to wash hands while train shakes. The major challenge over here lies with this type of diseases causes hand tremors and poor balance. Combine that with the jerk of the fast moving train, it's very it's becoming very difficultly, like it's nearly impossible to wash the hands properly without spillage or any injuries, because again the door is also open at the same time. So this is an again major issue over here. So this actually tests the motor control challenge is being actually tried in this particular type of solution category, problem category over here. So the fourth section where we are focusing more on the overweight or an obese people, where we are trying to visualize that someone with a larger body frame trying to access the sink. The major challenge is that the sink space is so narrow, the sink itself is so narrow, the narrow opening passage for the door also at the same time. There's no room for a movement. Water may splash off their hands, their body, the floor or the wall or the mirror or they themselves themselves. So causing an hygiene issue, more discomfort is what has been happening over here. Lastly, I also want to add in the same visual where the category is elderly people or a senior citizen. Not shown directly in the sketches, but try to incorporate in terms of visual symbolic iconography of that human. Where the major challenge is like with the age. With the greater age, balances become fragile. Grabbing the tab or leaning forward to spit or wash is risky in terms of such a jerky train in the fast movement. There's also the risk of spillage due to the water on the floor. Considering the low grip, joint pain or the reflexes delay is also a major issue we can find out over here. So lastly, if we recall everything, we are focusing more on wheelchair users, kids, Parkinson patients, very shaky hand movement, obese users, and at the same time, elderly people. So we are categorizing this over their issues, and we are trying to showcase that. And at the same time, if we focus more on do's and don't, the do part, which says directly that you need to think from a user centered perspective, you need to be very simply stick figure sketched is been need to be shown, and which has been tried to show in the this particular type of sketch also. No heavy complex sketches, avoid that, so that your answer should be very less time taken, and at the same time it's visually understandable also. Please make sure that you need to cover a range of all the age groups, and at the same time physical disabilities also. So mention everything properly, and in such type of question also make sure that you need to keep a context very realistic. A moving train adds another layer of difficulty over here, so please think from an practical approach also. And if we focus more on the don'ts part, make sure that don't generates all the users as the same height or the strength. Make sure that you need to not make about just one disability. You need to make sure that please don't forget about the interaction, or in terms of environment also, like the reach, greet, space, and the visual appearance over there, right? So this type of question is not about demonstrating only empathy, but with the help of your visual and thought process also. This type of question is not just about being very right, but it's about thinking like a designer, being very practical, and from a point of view of a user is what is been asked in this, expected in this particular type of question. Now let's move on to the fourth question, where I mean it's a very simple question. For 15 marks, they are just given the 4 different parts of in one single object, and they have asked this 2 questions on the basis of the given visuals, the 4 different visuals, where the first visual is that identify the object and draw its proportions to the human hand. And the second category of the question says that you need to use any one of the visual from that, and you need to create a different product from that existing one cutoff of the same object. So let's move on to the part of this particular question, where you need to draw a proportion drawing with the human hand and the object shown given below in the crop visuals. So firstly, if we try to see, we can easily understand that 4 crop or the partial views are of the object, which is screw, and where we are being expected to identify the object and draw it partially in the with proportionate to the hand. So in the solution, if you can see, there's a natural human hand drawn from the observation point of view, and the screw is placed between the thumb and the index finger, just likely how any human being can hold this particular object. What's good over here is that the scale is very accurate and the correct. If you see the proportionate part of the screw with the hand is very accurate. It's not too big or too small or too over exaggerated, any human hand or a object. One tip I can ever give you over here is that you can just imagine you're holding a screw while drawing that by looking at your whole hand itself. So that is a first visual in terms of if it's difficult to think and visually visualize and do that, so you can also go for that. And at the same time, you also need to make sure that the grip should look very natural. It should be 3D volumetric format. It should not look very flat and very simple type of sketch. Also, what you not to do over here is that don't draw a floating screw in the air. Don't show a disproportionate version of the screw as it's a big or too over exaggerated or the loud object. This test is more about your observation, not just your imagination. So please be very honest and be very practical in terms of such type of question. So in the part B of the questionnaire, they have been asking that we need to create a product inspired from any one of the frame they are given in the crop visuals, right? Now in this particular creative sketch, we have picked one of the frame from the given screw breakdown. Let's say that one that shows the top of the screw with the plus groove, and use it as an inspiration for any of the product design. So in the sample, we have tried to see that it's a beautiful sketch we have made in terms of steel tea kettle. And why it's good? Because the top view of the screw resembles the lid of the kettle, and the artist has also added a spout handle body and rendered it to look like a polished metal. So highly imaginative yet competitive to believe. So that will definitely work. But at the same time, you need to make sure that it should be in a 3D object format and does not morph it into a very flat looking visual. The concept is very strong. The render gives a very material feels, and at the same time, it's not just involved copying or transformation, but at the same time, you're thinking and visually connecting it with some different object, right? What to avoid over here, if I can tell you, is that don't sketch flat sketches like 2D form. Avoid basic geometric figures geometry basics. Avoid them in terms of like boxes or the balls. This needs a quite product thinking type of thought process. So don't draw something random. Connect it visually with the practical objects. If I tell you the quick tip in terms of if you want to get a full marks in this type of question in the part A, use your own hand as a reference. Again, I'm repeating this. Draw what you see. Maintain scale and volume. This is not just a cartoon sketch, so practicality is more important. And in the part B, if you look closely at the grooves, edges, and the surface of the screw, what else could this shape be? Think of everyday products, whether it's cup, tools, lamp, kitchenware, anything that resembles most. Your practical approach is what has been important over here. All of the above, render it cleanly, even pencil shading, clean lines, clear lines, stroke quality will make a bigger difference in such type of question. So let's move on to this fifth question and have a look at it, where we are given a passage, a dialogue between a philosopher and a young man. The whole conversation revolves around the idea of happiness and how it doesn't come from pleasing others, but by living true to your own value. And based on that, we had to answer 4 parts. The one which is identify this particular genre, what kind of genre has been asking the question. We also need to design a game based on this particular theme. Third, we need to mention how many people can play this particular game, what we are going to design. And finally, we also need to write 6 different rules for this particular type of questionnaire. So if you move on to the part A of this particular question, which is very simple, the genre itself says that it's psychology, because the entire conversation is about mindset, inner freedom, and the psychology behind the happiness and approval of it, right? So if we move on to the part B and the C part of this particular game, where we need to design a game. So if I talk about that, especially the part B section, here's the idea where the game is called You and the World is what we are trying to mention over here. Again, I will repeat, the game is called You and the World under this title. You can see that the sketch here, it shows a ground of a people standing in a circle, holding hands, and a soft ball placed in the middle. This setup represents how society works, people connected, judgment being passed, and how we behave with that particular circle. At the same time, please make sure that, in that particular game, this circle is like the prison, which we are trying to mention it as a metaphorically, of the public opinion mentioned in the passage. And the ball represents a judgment or pressure being thrown around. Whatever the psychology has been mentioned in that para, we have just tried to put that thing metaphorically throughout this very simpler type of positioning of character with the elements and the props all together connecting to each other. And if I now move on to the part C, which is the number of players, which could be, minimum it could be 3 and maximum 20, it even more depending on the space or a time. Now let's move on to the part D of the section, where we need to come across with the 6 different rules for this particular game. So the first rule could be the player from a circle. The players need to form a circle and then to hold hands. A soft ball is placed in the center. Secondly, the circle moves. either clockwise or anti-clockwise while holding the hand. Third, players have to kick the ball towards anyone else in the circle. Fourthly, if someone kicks the ball out or misses it, they are out. Fifth, if anyone breaks the chain or let go of the hand, they are also out. Lastly, the game continues till two players remain, and the one who stays focused and error free till the end is the winner. The aim is to stay true to yourself, stay focused, and not get thrown off by pressure, just like the message in the dialogue. Lastly, the concept behind the game, if I try to explain, is that, so what's the deeper meaning over this particular game is the circle represents the society's judgment, the ball represents the opinion being passed around, and the last player standing is the one who has become free, which is he has a lot of confidence, he's true to himself, he's unaffected by outside pressure. It's a game about self-realization and freedom from fear of judgment. It's a game about a lot of confidence. It's a game about how focused you are and how strong you are and how others can't, I can say, change your thought process, or how unaffected you are by outside pressure. If we move on to the do's and don't part of this particular questionnaire, we can see that the do's section, which says you need to keep the game energetic but thoughtful. It shouldn't be in a very boring manner or forced played game kind of thing. You need to encourage players to reflect after they are out, and the use of the game is workshops, classroom, or a self-growth session. The don'ts part of this particular game's rules could be like, don't turn it into just a physical competition. It's more about symbolic and metaphorical approach for this particular para which has been mentioned. Also, don't forget to explain the concept while adding the game visual plus the para which has been mentioned in the question. And lastly, please don't make it too serious. Keep it fun but meaningful and children specific, playful specific. Lastly, I would say that that's how your answer is more about creative, conceptual, questionnaire based for this particular NID type of question. It's all about how you're linking ideas, you are being more real, emotional, practical, and human psychology, understanding person. That is what this question is going to be asked for. If you found out this helpful, please make sure that you can add your comments about more understanding or some more ideas for this type of question if you have. Please do make sure that this type of question asks more about a very creative thought process from you rather than a very generic approach. So make sure that go for lots and lots of research in terms of playful games, research about it, and make sure that you can blend those ideas with any type of questionnaire comes around designing a game, so that you can't lose marks and it could be more scoring for you in this type of questionnaire.